For 19 years, I believed I had built the perfect life. I was Ray, a self-made contractor who worked 80-hour weeks to give my wife Elaine the lifestyle she deserved. We had a beautiful daughter, Sophia, who was heading to college, and I had just put the down payment on our dream home. I never imagined that the two women I loved most would betray me so completely. The signs were there, but I was too blinded by trust to see that my wife was sleeping with her ex-boss Richard, and my own daughter was helping them hide it. Before I share how my family's betrayal changed me forever, let me know where you're watching from. Hit subscribe if you want to hear how I rebuilt myself after losing everything I thought mattered. I grew up with nothing. My parents worked multiple jobs just to keep our lights on, and I swore my own family would never face those struggles. I started working construction at 16, saving every penny for college, where I met Elaine during my sophomore year. She was everything I wasn't: sophisticated, from a good family, ambitious. When she agreed to date me, I felt like I had won the lottery. We got married young, right after graduation. I started my contracting business from our tiny apartment, working 7 days a week, while Elaine landed her first marketing job. Those early years were tough. I remember nights when we ate ramen for dinner because every spare dollar went back into growing my company. But we were a team, or so I thought. When Elaine got pregnant with Sophia, I doubled my workload. By the time our daughter was born, I had 5 employees and had landed my first major commercial project. I still remember holding Sophia in the hospital, promising her the world. I missed a lot of her early years, working sunrise to sunset, but I called home 3 times a day without fail. As my business grew, Elaine climbed the corporate ladder at Jensen Marketing. That's where she first met Richard Taylor, the executive vice president who took a special interest in her career. I remember meeting him at company parties, smug, overconfident, with a reputation for office romances. But I trusted my wife completely, even encouraged her, when Richard offered her a promotion that required late nights and weekend work. By the time Sophia turned 10, our financial situation had finally stabilized. I had 30 employees, a solid reputation in the industry, and contracts booked 2 years in advance. We moved to a better neighborhood, enrolled Sophia in private school, and began taking actual family vacations. I finally felt like all those years of sacrifice were paying off. Through middle school and early high school, Sophia and I were inseparable. She would come to job sites with me on weekends wearing a tiny hard hat I had custom made. We had daddy-daughter dates every Thursday night, a tradition that continued even as she entered her teenage years. Elaine was often working late, so Sophia and I developed our own special bond. 3 years ago, Elaine left Jensen Marketing to join a competitor, claiming Richard's management style had become too controlling. I supported her decision completely, even though it meant another period of adjustment for our family. With Elaine's new position came more travel, more late nights, but also a substantial salary increase. Last year, we finally purchased the lake house we had been dreaming about for years, a 6-bedroom, 4-bathroom retreat that represented everything we had worked for. When Sophia got accepted to my alma mater with a partial scholarship, I couldn't have been prouder. We were planning a special graduation trip to Europe, and I was secretly organizing a 20th anniversary vow renewal in Italy for Elaine and me. Everything seemed perfect on the surface. The first signs appeared so gradually that I dismissed them. Elaine started buying new clothes, more revealing than her usual style. She joined a new gym and began working out with a personal trainer. Her phone was suddenly password protected, and she would take calls in another room. When I asked about these changes, she explained it away as preparation for a promotion. I believed her because I wanted to. About 6 months ago, Sophia's behavior toward me began to change. Our Thursday dinners became tense, with Sophia constantly checking her phone or making excuses to leave early. When I suggested father-daughter activities, she would claim to be too busy with school or friends. I assumed it was normal teenage rebellion, perhaps anxiety about college. The night before everything fell apart, we had a family dinner at home. Looking back, the tension was palpable. Elaine kept checking her watch. Sophia barely made eye contact with me, and when I suggested we plan our summer vacation together, both of them changed the subject. Still, I was clueless about what was happening right under my nose. The job in San Diego was supposed to take a full week, but we finished the project 2 days early. I decided to surprise my family by coming home on Wednesday instead of Friday. I remember feeling excited about having unexpected time with Elaine and Sophia, maybe taking them both out for a special dinner to celebrate the completed project. As I was driving home, my phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. Mom, Dad finished early. Coming home today. ETA 4 p.m. I stared at the message, confused. It was clearly meant for Elaine, sent to me by mistake. Something cold settled in my stomach, but I still didn't want to believe what my instincts were telling me. When I pulled into our driveway at 3:30, I noticed a black Mercedes parked there, a car I recognized as belonging to Richard Taylor, Elaine's former boss. I sat in my truck for nearly 10 minutes trying to convince myself there was an innocent explanation. Maybe it was a work meeting. Maybe he was just stopping by. Maybe. Our house was quiet when I entered, but I heard sounds coming from upstairs, unmistakable sounds that turned my blood to ice. I remember each step up the stairs felt like climbing a mountain, each footfall bringing me closer to something I couldn't unsee. The bedroom door wasn't fully closed. One push and 19 years of marriage shattered before my eyes. Elaine didn't even notice me at first, too caught up with Richard in our bed. When she finally saw me standing in the doorway, her expression wasn't shame or regret, but irritation at being interrupted. Richard simply smirked like he'd won some competition I didn't even know I was part of. "You're early," Elaine said, as if that explained everything. As if I was the one who had done something wrong. I stood there strangely calm. How long was all I could ask. "Does it matter?" Richard answered before Elaine could. "She's been unhappy for years." I ignored him, keeping my eyes on my wife. "I asked you a question, Elaine." She sighed, reaching for her robe. 6 months officially, but we've been reconnected for about a year. 6 months. While I was planning our anniversary. While I was putting our daughter through college. While I was building us a life. "Get out," I told Richard, my voice dangerously quiet. "Get out of my house right now." He laughed. "Your house, Elaine and I have been talking about this place. Great investment property once you're out of the picture." I took a step toward him, but Elaine moved between us. "Ray, just go cool off. We can talk about this later when you're calmer." "Calmer? You're sleeping with your ex-boss in our bed, and you expect me to be calm." I pulled out my phone. "I'm calling Sophia. We're having a family meeting right now." Elaine actually rolled her eyes. "She already knows, Ray." Those 3 words hurt worse than finding them together. "What do you mean?" "She knows Sophia has known for months." Elaine said, her voice cold. "She understands that sometimes people grow apart." I called Sophia anyway, demanding she come home immediately. While waiting for her arrival, I made Richard get dressed and move to the living room. I refused to look at either of them pacing our kitchen, trying to process how my life had imploded in the space of 20 minutes. When Sophia arrived, her expression told me everything. She wasn't surprised. She wasn't upset. She looked annoyed, just like her mother. "Did you know?" I asked her directly. "Did you know your mother was having an affair?" Sophia glanced at Richard, then at Elaine before answering. "Yes, I knew. Mom deserves to be happy, and I deserve to be betrayed. Lied to by my own daughter." "You're always working," she shot back. "You're controlling with money. Mom feels suffocated." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Controlling? I've worked my entire life to give you both everything you wanted. Richard understands Mom in ways you never have." Sophia continued. "He appreciates her talents. He's going to help her start her own agency." Richard nodded smugly. "Elaine has incredible potential that's been wasted playing housewife." Playing housewife, I was incredulous. "She has a 6-figure job that I supported her in getting. I've encouraged every career move she's wanted." The conversation deteriorated from there. Elaine complained about feeling unfulfilled, despite living in a house I had worked myself to exhaustion to provide. Sophia revealed that Richard had promised to pay for her education expenses. "When the time comes," a phrase that chilled me to the bone. Out of desperation, I checked Elaine's phone while she was arguing with me. What I found made me physically ill: messages between her and Richard discussing how to gradually transfer my business assets after the change. They had been planning for months how to take everything from me once they were together officially. Even worse, I found texts from Sophia helping them coordinate their meetings, warning her mother when I was coming home, suggesting excuses for Elaine's absences. My own daughter had been an active participant in destroying our family. I'm leaving, I finally said, cutting off their justifications. I'll be back for my things tomorrow. Don't be dramatic. Elaine scoffed. Where will you go? Anywhere that's away from both of you, I answered, looking at my wife and daughter as if seeing strangers. That night in the hotel room was the lowest point of my life. I alternated between rage heartbreak and complete emotional shutdown. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I simply sat by the window watching the city lights, wondering how I had missed the signs for so long. The next morning I called Marcus Jennings, reputed as the toughest divorce attorney in the state. His first available appointment was in 3 days, but after hearing the basics of my situation, he squeezed me in that afternoon. It was the first step in reclaiming control of my life. Documentation is everything Marcus advised during our meeting. Bank statements, text messages, photographs, witnesses, if you have them. We need to establish a clear timeline of infidelity and financial misconduct. I began investigating our finances immediately and discovered something alarming over the past 4 months. Elaine had been transferring small amounts from our joint business account to a separate account I knew nothing about. Nearly $150,000 had disappeared this way. Marcus helped me secure emergency court orders to freeze our joint assets while the divorce proceeded. We documented the affair with timestamps from the text messages and photographs I had taken in our home. Within 48 hours of discovering the affair, I had established separate accounts and transferred my most recent business earnings there legally before Elaine could access them. Sophia's reaction to these moves was immediate and vicious. She began posting on social media about her controlling father who was punishing her mother for finding happiness. Former friends and even some family members began taking sides without knowing the full story. I maintained my silence publicly, following Marcus's advice not to engage. When I returned to the house to collect essential belongings, I discovered my home office had been ransacked. Critical business documents were missing, including contracts and client information that could damage my company if used improperly. I immediately changed all password security protocols and notified key clients about a potential data breach without mentioning my personal situation. A week after the discovery, I confronted Richard at his office. Security almost removed me, but I simply said, "Tell Richard that Ray Santiago is here about the financial plans he made with my wife." He agreed to see me, clearly confident in his position. I know everything, I told him calmly. The transfers, the plans for my business, the timeline of when you plan to make your move. I have copies of everything. His smirk faltered. Prove it in court. Oh, I will, I promised. But I thought you should know that your current wife has also received copies of all communications between you and Elaine. Interesting that you were planning a future with my wife while still married yourself. That information hadn't been in my original plan, but Marcus had discovered Richard's marital status during background research. The look on Richard's face confirmed I had hit a nerve. The first divorce hearing revealed Elaine's complete shock at my level of preparation. She had assumed I would be too emotionally devastated to function effectively. Her attorney requested continuances and delays, but the judge, presented with evidence of financial misconduct, denied most of their motions. I decided to sell our lake house despite Elaine's objections. The judge approved the sale, given the evidence of her financial misconduct. The 6-bedroom dream home that represented all our years together was sold to a young tech executive and his family. I used my portion of the proceeds to purchase a modest 3-bedroom house closer to my company headquarters. 3 weeks into the divorce proceedings, Richard was served with divorce papers from his own wife. Apparently, the evidence I had shared had been the last straw in what was already a troubled marriage. Almost immediately, his interest in funding Elaine's new agency seemed to cool. The real blow came when Sophia called me in panic mode. She was 2 months into her freshman year, and the university was threatening to cancel her enrollment due to unpaid tuition. Richard had promised to cover the expenses, but had suddenly become unavailable. "Dad, please," she begged. "I can't lose my spot. All my friends are here. It was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made. I'm sorry, Sophia, but no. You chose your side. That's not fair. I'm your daughter. A daughter who helped destroy her family, who helped another man plan to take everything from her father. Actions have consequences." She hung up on me. The pain was excruciating, but I held firm. Marcus had advised me that giving in now would undermine my position in the divorce proceedings. More importantly, I needed to establish boundaries that reflected my new understanding of our relationship. Elaine lost her job the following week. Someone had anonymously sent her company's HR department evidence of her affair with a former executive while still employed at Jensen Marketing, violating several company policies. I suspected Richard's wife taking her own revenge. With Richard distancing himself and her career in jeopardy, Elaine's carefully constructed exit plan was crumbling. While they dealt with the consequences of their actions, I focused entirely on rebuilding. I restructured my company, implemented stricter financial controls, and took on several high-profile projects that had previously seemed beyond our capacity. Work became my therapy, my distraction, and ultimately my salvation. The divorce was finalized after 4 months of legal battles. Due to the documented infidelity and financial misconduct, Elaine received significantly less than the 50% she had expected. The judge was particularly unsympathetic given the evidence of her planned asset stripping. She was granted a cash settlement that, while substantial, was nowhere near the windfall she and Richard had anticipated. As for Richard, his professional reputation suffered after both divorces became public knowledge. Several female employees came forward with complaints about his behavior, resulting in an internal investigation at his company. The last I heard, he had been demoted and was fighting to keep even that position. 6 months after the divorce, my life had taken a shape I never could have imagined. My company was thriving, expanding into new markets that I had previously been too cautious to enter. The smaller house had become a peaceful sanctuary, decorated simply in a way that reflected my tastes alone. I had reconnected with old friends who had fallen by the wayside during my marriage and even begun dating casually, though nothing serious. Elaine's situation was starkly different. Without Richard's financial support or her corporate position, she had been forced to take a junior marketing role at a small agency for a fraction of her previous salary. The apartment she had moved into was nothing like the home she had shared with me. According to mutual friends, Richard had completely cut contact once his own divorce was finalized. Sophia had been forced to leave the university after her first semester. Without tuition payments and with no financial aid arranged, she had no choice but to return home. Not to my home, but to the small apartment where Elaine was now living. Their relationship had reportedly become strained under the financial and emotional pressure. The first attempt at reconciliation came in the form of a long email from Elaine detailing her regret and the consequences she was facing. "I never thought it would end like this," she wrote. Richard was a fantasy that I threw away my reality for. I read it twice, then archived it without responding. Sophia's approach was more direct. She showed up at my office unannounced one afternoon, looking nothing like the confident young woman who had sided with her mother's lover. Her clothes were from discount stores rather than the boutiques she had preferred, and the designer handbag was gone. "Dad," she said simply when my assistant showed her in. "Can we talk?" I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "I'm listening." "I made a horrible mistake." She began, tears forming immediately. "I believed everything Richard said. He told me Mom had been unhappy for years, that you were holding her back. He promised to be a mentor to me to help with my career after college. And you believed that was worth betraying your father." My voice was steady, though my heart was racing. "I was stupid and selfish," she admitted. "When everything fell apart, when Richard disappeared and Mom lost her job, I realized how manipulated I had been. We both were. Your mother is an adult who made her choices," I pointed out. "You're young, but you're old enough to know right from wrong." Sophia nodded, wiping her tears. "I know. That's why I'm here without her knowing. I want to make things right, Dad. I want a chance to earn back your trust." Something in her sincerity reached me. The anger I had been nursing began to crack just slightly. "That would take time, Sophia. A lot of time." "I have time," she said quietly. "I just don't want to lose you forever." A week later, I received a handwritten letter from Elaine. Unlike the email, which had focused on her suffering, this letter acknowledged the pain she had caused. "You gave me everything," she wrote, "and I convinced myself it wasn't enough. The life we built together was beautiful, and I destroyed it for a fantasy that never existed. For the first time since the betrayal, I allowed myself to really feel the full scope of my loss. The family I had worked so hard to build, the future I had planned, the trust I had given so completely. But alongside that grief came a realization. Forgiveness might eventually be possible, even if reconciliation was not. I established a trust fund for Sophia's education, with clear conditions: maintaining academic excellence, attending counseling, and participating in a financial literacy program. It wasn't about the money. It was about teaching responsibility and rebuilding our relationship with firm boundaries. As for Elaine, I finally responded to her letter with one of my own. "I may someday forgive you," I wrote, "but we can never go back. I wish you healing and growth, but our paths are permanently diverged." The journey of rebuilding after betrayal taught me lessons I never expected to learn. I discovered that my worth wasn't tied to what I could provide for others. I learned that boundaries aren't selfish but necessary for healthy relationships. Most importantly, I realized that losing what I thought was essential opened the door to discovering what truly matters. Today, I'm cautiously exploring a new relationship with someone who understands the value of loyalty and honesty. I'm mentoring young contractors who remind me of myself 20 years ago. And I'm slowly, carefully rebuilding a relationship with my daughter based on mutual respect rather than obligation. Have you ever had to completely rebuild your life after betrayal? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story helped you feel less alone in your own struggles, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real stories about finding strength after loss. Share this video with someone who might be facing similar challenges. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most authentic beginnings.